Hello, today's lesson is on decimal subtraction, lesson 2.6. We're going to estimate the answer when we're subtracting decimals, and we're going to then subtract for the actual. As we've seen before, and it can't be reminded to us too many times, the difference is the answer or result of subtraction. This is the main vocabulary word you need to know for this unit. So if we think about the situation that Kirsty is in, buying groceries, having limited amount of money, and then looking at what we can afford and what we can't afford, that's just everyday life. And so when we see that our bank account is going down, something's getting used up, something's decreasing, this concept is all about subtraction. We use subtraction with money and with decimals all the time. So what that does for us is it allows us to go through this unit more quickly and effortlessly because it's something that we're used to. When we subtract decimal numbers, we need to remember when we're doing it by hand, we need to line up the decimals, and that means lining up the digits. And sometimes that means adding zeros so that we have the same number of decimal places. And when we add zeros, it usually requires borrowing. So let's look at this example. Clay works in a shop where he assembles rubber hoses. The metal end pieces on a hose are attached by crimping, which means the metal is crushed down to a smaller size, trapping the hose inside it. So certain end piece starts out at 1.875 centimeters across. The instructions say to crimp it so its size decreases by 0.088 centimeters. How big will the end piece be after it is crimped? We can find out by subtracting. So we're going to make sure that we have the larger number up top, minus the amount that you have to crimp off, have our decimals lined up, and then you can try it right here. Make sure you've got it. I'm going to go ahead and subtract the ones place. I can't subtract 5 minus 8, so I'll need to borrow from the 7, giving me 15 minus 8, which is 7. 6 minus 8 is also not possible, so I'm going to borrow here. 16 minus 8 is 8. 7 minus 0 is 7. The decimal gets brought down as it's in line, and 1 minus 0 is 1. For the do together, number 1, Clay is working on another end piece, which is 1.8 centimeters across. He's supposed to crimp this one until it is 0.023 centimeters smaller. What will the new size be? So this idea of decreasing, getting smaller, this all is showing us subtraction. We can see that we line up the decimal places, which means we will need to fill in with zeros here in order to subtract. So we're going to borrow over at the 8, make that a 7. We'll give to this 0, which will make it a 10, and then we will borrow from it, making it a 9, to give to this last 0, making it a 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 2 is 7. 7 minus 0 is 7. We bring our decimal place down, and 1 minus 0 is 1. So the new size will be 1.777 centimeters. For number 2, we have our subtraction written horizontally, so we'll need to change that to vertical subtraction. So 39.1 minus 0.794. We can see here that we need to add in 2 zeros to hold our place value, and that requires borrowing. So we're going to borrow from this 1, making it a 0, give, makes a 10, now borrow from the 10, makes it a 9, and give, so we have a 10 in our ones place. 10 minus 4 is 6, 9 minus 9 is 0, 0 minus 7 we cannot do, we need to borrow again, take from the 9 to make a 10, 10 minus 7 is 3, we bring our decimal place lined up, 8 minus 0 is 8, and 3 minus 0 is 3. So we will end up with 38 306 thousandths. If you'd like to work with me on a few of these exercise questions, we're going to estimate first, and then we're going to subtract. So remember, estimating means front-end rounding. So we're going to practice our rounding skills here. This first one, 2,700 or 2,700 and change here, is going to round to 3,000. And the 20.43 is going to round to 20. So we're going to subtract those. Remember, we are going to need to borrow here, so this will become a 2, and then a 9, and then a 10 minus 2 is 8, and a 9 and a 2. So we end up with 2,980 for our estimate. Let's do our actual now. We're going to be careful to line up our decimal places. The 20.43. Here we don't need to add in any zeros. So we're going to subtract now, and we'll hold the decimal place where it needs to be. 5 minus 3 is 2, 5 minus 4 is 1, 1 minus 0 is 1, 4 minus 2 is 2, and then 7 and 2. So no borrowing on that, and we end up quite close to our estimate. For number 2, let's round. We're going to front end round. So 750 and the decimals becomes 800. And 10.502 remains as just 10. Again, we're going to subtract, and this will require some borrowing. So we're going to borrow here. And 10 minus 1 is 9. So we end up with 790 as our estimate. And now we're going to do our actual. 8947 minus 10.502. We'll pop in an extra 0 to keep all our places lined up. We can put our decimal down and start to subtract. 7 minus 0 is 7. 4 minus 2 is 2. 9 minus 0 is 9. 8 minus 5 is 3. 0 minus 0 is 0. 5 minus 1 is 4. 7 minus 0 is 7. So our estimate and actual are close to each other. Let's look at 2 more questions, number 15 and 16. We're going to estimate and find the actual. So I'm going to round 25.3 up to 30. And then 0.8 rounds up to 1. So this 0.8 is pushing the whole number up to 1. 30 minus 1 is 29, and now we can subtract. The decimal is lined up. I'm going to need to borrow here. 13 minus 8 is 5. 4 minus 0 is 4, and 2 minus 0 is 2. For number 16, our whole number, 7, we're going to leave it as it is. And then for our decimal, it's going to round to 0. 7 minus 0 is 7. Now we can put in our decimal place and fill up with zeros. And we will need to borrow here. So we're going to borrow from the 7, making it a 6. Give and take, give and take, and give, as we need 10 to subtract away the 5. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 3 is 6. 9 minus 0 is 9. We bring our decimal place down, and 6 minus 0 is 6. So we're very close in our estimate and our actual. So best wishes for the rest of exercise 2.6 and the cumulative review for 2.6.